Welcome to a homegrown family podcast where we grow the produce and the kids. Welcome to this episode. Today I have a special guest here, my friend Ryan. We met over in Yakima. Not only did I a good experience there, but I also met a lot of good friends, a lot of good people from that time in my life. And it's not just that time in my life in which I come to realize something, but throughout the course of my short life, I've come to realize that there is type of people in the world, including myself, that just have to grow something. Whether it's just a potted, plant in their house, or, the draped flower garden beds coming off the windows, or whatever it is, or a vegetable garden. They just have this knack or this desire underneath their soul, that's like forged in their DNA to grow something. And so Ryan's one of these type of people. We're going to talk a little bit about his life and his experiences. And, so welcome aboard, Ryan.
Thank you for having me, dude. I'm so stoked for this. I'm stoked for this podcast. I'm stoked for you. I'm stoked for your family. And I can't wait to be like a regular listener for this thing for sure.
A regular listener, that'd be awesome. And definitely thanks to all listeners that are currently listening to this episode, sticking around this long. I was trying to think the other day, Ryan. We met in Yakima, but I can't put a finger on how exactly we met.
I know.
You do?
I remember exactly how we met.
Okay.
We met through our other buddy, Jake.
Yes.
Jake Sedlin. And full disclosure, I wasn't keened up on religious practice at all. In any sense, at the time, I had a desire to know and to kind of build a relationship with God, but I didn't know what that looked like, and I didn't have any kind of mentorship or I didn't really have like a family that was real like centered on Christ. So at the time, I was a majorly lost cause, if I may. And my buddy Jake, tricked me into coming to have a drink with Monsignor. And I don't remember what to call him in the Catholic Church.
I was like
He's not, is he priest? Is it a priest?
Yeah, he's a priest. He's Monsignor Eckert. Yeah, or in your Diocese of Yakima. Yep.
So Jake tricked me into the theology on tap that they had at that diocese, where regular folks like me and regular churchgoers like Jake could go and just like to a public setting, a public place, and just have a drink and talk about things that were, I grew up thinking that you're not supposed to talk about two specific things. You're not supposed to talk about religion, and you're not supposed to talk about politics, and especially with friends.
You can't hardly avoid that with Jake, I think.
No, Jake, man, if there was a pivotal point in my life, it was around the time that I met Jake Seven. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing for me, and it's a better thing for him, because I made him better.
He made me better too.
That's how we met, though, was I started going to a couple of those theology on tap where we'd go out, and I was able to talk directly with Monsignor and Monsignor Eckert, and he gave just this, like, man, his story, there's so many awesome books that would come from just his story. He was in World War II, I think it was. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I think he was like a medic or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, he did something that wasn't it. Like he wasn't a chaplain. He was like in the army, and then he transitioned into the Marines and did some other like really cool war stuff. But when he was over there is when he like found his centering for like, getting his life back on track. Like a Christ-centered life.
Did you know that he's still there?
Is he really?
Yeah, he's still
like not even in a mean way or like a bad way, but he was probably 8,000 years old when I was.
Yeah, I think he's like 85, but he runs like 3-4 miles a day. I sent him my Christmas card again this year.
Nice. Yeah, dude, Monsignor, he was awesome, and those stories were awesome. And that put us to the house.
The Haven.
The Haven. That's what it was.
Yeah. So it was like a men's house attached with a diocese, and Jake was holding a little barbecue or something.
Yep.
And we both were there.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how we met. And then,
Okay.
crazier, like many years passed. I should say several years passed, not many years, but several. And then I ended up moving to Colorado and started a homestead in Colorado. And then my brother ended up coming to Alaska. And then you went to Alaska. And then I went to Alaska. But they were all completely happenstance. And I
Yeah.
remember calling you up one day and being like, dude, how you doing? And you're like, whatever it was that you were doing, you're like, it's just getting a little cold here. And I was thinking in my head, like, it can't be as cold as wherever you are because I'm in Fairbanks, Alaska. And you were like, no, I'm in Fairbanks. And I thought you were just totally joking with me. But no, it turns out that we were literally in the same neighborhood, which was also a crazy thing.
Yeah. Because we had disconnected a little bit when I was still in Washington. Then you went over to Colorado.
Yep.
And
Yep.
yeah, so
Yep.
so we're both a little bit of a nomad and kind of traveled around a couple of different states between now and where we are now. You're still over in Fairbanks,
I'm in Fairbanks. Yep.
and then I'm over back in the Midwest, North Dakota, Minnesota. So back where I originally grew up. But let's talk a little bit more about your time in Colorado.
Yeah. So I moved there with my ex-wife. My ex-sister-in-law had a small 40-acre lot, and she called me up and said that she was getting ready to have back surgery and some other things going on. And she already had one horse at the time, one horse and two chickens, and that's how her farm got started. But she said that she just couldn't take care of the animals and was wondering if we were willing to move in to the adjacent plot. So she had 40 acres. There was an empty 40-acre lot, and then there was a 40-acre lot for sale on the other side of that property. So we basically liquidated everything and moved to Colorado from scratch to start kind of a homestead and help her, my sister-in-law at the time, help her with her farm.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, we grew.
Yeah. Hey, tell you what, the listeners I have listening to this podcast, you heard horses and chickens. Now,
Yeah.
I don't think I'd ever recommend starting a homestead with a horse.
No, no, absolutely not. Don't ever do it. Matter of fact, unless you have experienced people on your shoulder to help you through the entire process for any equestrian animal, don't do it. Put horse ownership and homesteading in the same sentence, honestly. That's personal.
Yeah, and a lot of deal about homesteading and being homegrown is that you're able to produce and grow your own food or do all these things that have a return. And horses, they have this nickname called hay burners, and that's
Yeah.
because they usually just eat all your hay, and you don't get much out of them. You don't butcher them for meat. You don't, they're pretty to look at maybe, but they really don't serve a real good purpose in a homesteading setting type of situation, I'd say.
So in my growth of homesteading in Colorado, somewhere down the line, we also picked up a mule. My
That's
sister-in-law had
right.
for like calling up feedlots and really gaslighting feedlots and basically adopting animals that were destined for death. Sometimes they were like, their owners were either unable to take care of them, so they had to surrender them, or like, the worst case scenarios where they were abused or whatever. And like federal organizations came in and took the animal because they weren't in a safe position. And my sister-in-law, bless her heart, had a really big heart, but our acreage was shortening. So we kept taking in horses and some goats and stuff that were basically like pets. Everything was a pet at the time.
And you had a purpose for the mule though, right? Didn't it deter
Yeah.
coyotes or something?
Yes. When I came across Hugo, he was not a feedlot. He wasn't like we didn't just like, rescue him. I sought him out. I actually went to an auction and he was one of the last that came off the trailer. And by that time, most of the big spenders, if I may, had already packed up and left for the day. So when it came time for him, I think I paid $200 for him. and the lady that owned him offered him a ride to my house and told me on the way that he's not untrainable per se. He was still kind of a young Jack, and he's not untrainable, but he's very personable, and he's he's a mule, so he's stubborn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't afraid of it. I said, let's just do it. Everything else that we did, we went head first into. So let's just try it and see what happens. And man, there was a point in my homesteading time that I absolutely relied on that mule. Whether it was packing stuff around, with a four-wheeler that was dead, or a tractor that had split a tire, or pasture protector. I mean, that guy was an absolute warrior in the field. A mule is something I can get behind for a homestead because he came with other attributes, and I don't know if it was just a Hugo thing or if it's like a built-in mule thing, but he came literally armored. I've seen that mule stomp out coyotes, like literally to the death. I've seen that guy stomp out rattlesnakes and at least mark rattlesnakes in the field, that would potentially be harmful for other animals or the kids that are running around in the yard. So yeah, I can definitely see if you have the space for it. Mule was a real special thing for my homestead.
Yeah, yeah, and I think perhaps even a little bit more practical. A lot of things that you can use it to haul things and that type of
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
I know a lot of people will use or turn to dogs, for that type of protection of the herd animals or that type of thing. But you do have to be careful what kind of breeds you get, because sometimes you can get a breed that's meant to be very protective, and then it's not a family dog, and so gotta watch out for that.
What I learned over the years for any animal, there may have been like an intention of the breed, but everything comes out with the intention of how it's raised.
Mm-hmm.
You might have and unfortunately, pit bulls have like a really bad rep for the dog that they are.
Yep.
Like a really bad reputation. But I've also met pit bulls that are literally the most cuddly, caring, sweetest dogs that you can ever come across. It's really about the upbringing and what job you give them to do as the owner. And I think that bleeds into like homesteading animals also.
Yeah. One of the easiest and first animals I'd say for a homestead. So you said don't do the horses, right?
Don't do horses, 100%.
But the chickens. Chickens, that's one of the first things you can get that recover eggs and produce pretty quickly. I'd say that's one that's usually easily taken care of once you get them going and that kind of thing. So yeah, tell me a little more about your experience with chickens.
Yeah, when I first got there, my sister-in-law had 2 chickens. I'm sure Joe has talked about or will talk about flock sizes. 2 chickens wasn't doing it. There wasn't enough production of egg.
Mm-hmm.
When one chicken went down, sure, you can harvest the meat for it, but then you're stuck with one chicken that's not producing anything, is almost dead weight in your coop. So
yeah, I'd say for my listeners here, the chickens in general, if they're really healthy breeds, could almost lay 1 egg a day. That's probably, they're meant for egg production at that point and not really a meat bird. But I'd say your general dual purpose meat bird and egg layer, should be at least every other day, if not 66, 80% of the time they're laying an egg.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair. At least 1 a day.
Yeah.
So I went down to the feed store, our tractor supply store. It happened to be spring. This is another way to get caught up when you're starting your homestead is, man, they have so many sales on cool animals and cool, like habitats for them, like coops and, round pens and hog panels, and everything goes on sale. And you see the couple itty bitty bunnies and they're super cheap. And then you think to yourself, man, I could raise a few rabbits. But that's exactly what we did when we started was I picked up another 4 chickens and we stuck basically the whole time with Rhode Island Reds. We branched out a few other breeds just to get some color in our flock. But Rhode Island Red was like the hardy, and they were super accessible. Like they were super easy.
They're a pretty solid breed. In terms of, I think even for the northern climates, in upper Midwest or even Alaska, they could handle that colder temperatures too.
Yeah, they're easy to roost. They're easy to bed. So we went with a bucket bucket nests, like the 5-gallon bucket nests.
Oh, I've never heard of those.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's cool. Um, but one of the things when you're starting, if you're just starting up, definitely chickens is a relatively easy thing. Everything on a homestead requires attention.
Mm-hmm.
Gaps in your fencing. If you plan to free range chickens, free range doesn't always mean just, set free forever and do what you will, right? You still have to be able to captivate and have some kind of productivity from your animals. So setting some boundaries for your flock or for your coop was a thing that we had to do pretty quickly, because our 6 chickens then quickly turned to, I don't know, 12 chickens or so. 12 turned into, over the course of a year and a half, 2 years, well over 100 chickens. And it wasn't
Yeah.
natural bred. We had purchased a couple more and got a couple more roosters for different coops. We were trying to open the production of our laying hens. So we would bring in a rooster for that particular coop, and then we would build onto the coop and then separate. And then over time, eventually we ended up building chicken tractors, which was an incredible thing for the birds themselves. They had a big, happy, healthy life, but also for the land. And it helped me out with, like my general gardens.
Yeah. So
So,
can you describe what exactly is a chicken tractor? Because me, I'm
so
picturing for our readers, I'm just picturing like some kind of device that's like mobile. You can put on some wheels and you can drive around, and wherever you want to go, you can go.
yeah, so I'm remiss to not have websites at the ready, but, there are definitely like building instructions online that you can find for free. And that's exactly what I did. Was I Googled, one of my neighbors had a chicken tractor, but essentially what we ended up building was a 30-foot, no, it was a 25-foot triangle, like a 3D triangle, but it was 25 feet long. And on one end of it, we had a set of wheelbarrow wheels that were attached to an axle, that when it was laid down, there wasn't any space on the ground. And we basically covered the A-frame of the tractor with chicken wire or some kind of netting. I know for a little while we used snow fencing, but we found that the plastic was hurting the birds when they would peck at it to eat. So we went right back to chicken wire, and a lot of homesteading is doing it and then learning it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the chicken tractor, and the whole idea is that you can move the coop wherever you want to on your property, and you get a lot of benefits from your birds when you don't have to do anything for it. The birds will scratch the ground, which allows it to aerate a little bit better, introducing some new nutrients to the ground with their soil. So when they do their chicken thing out there, it's not in one place to clean, which saves a lot of time, a lot of energy,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives the birds a fresh perspective on another place to look around within their coop if you're not doing free range chickens.
Yeah, and I know sometimes when you do a free range chicken, they'll kind of tend to do their dust baths and stuff in the same area all the time, and
Yeah.
will really ruin the grass around the area. And so this mobile pen or this chicken tractor can allow you to move it more frequently, so that way they don't destroy some of that topsoil as much and things like that too, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the size of your coop or of your flock depends on how much space you have inside to rest. So for me in my coop, I had several roosts that we made out of drill. We just drilled 2-inch dowels, and we would thread dowels in there, and that's where they would roost at. Another tractor that we built, I used 2x6, and they actually had like more of a platform to sit on instead of just something round. But yeah, those chicken tractors were a absolute godsend. It made light work of doing, oftentimes we would move a round pen for training some of the equestrian animals or
Mm-hmm.
or something. And it was just, the ground was so dry out there sometimes. Those chickens really brought it back to life, and it gave new nutrients in the grass, just like you were saying. So yeah, chicken tractor. And I think, if I remember correctly, and it's got to be at least in the ballpark, for 25 foot, and that includes an enclosure inside of the tractor that allows them to rest from the elements and to lay. Inside of those tractors, I think that we were able to host 20 birds at a time, and I think that it cost me less than 200 a piece. Now, lumber prices now are different than they were then, for sure. But I don't think that it would be too far off, especially using recycled wood or recycled lumber. one thing that we learned pretty early on in homesteading is that it doesn't have to be pretty to be functional.
Just functional. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast here too about some homesteading things, and one of the things they always say is don't build your permanent fence right away because you don't know how you're going to utilize your land or your property. So, I mean, the border fence, yeah, perfect. But after that, you don't always know how to parcel out your pastures for your horses or for your sheep or your other animals. And as you realize the capacity in which your land can hold, like for chickens, how much chickens you can hold in your tractor or a mobile pen there, you kind of learn that as you go. And so it's hard to, it's a lot of, like you said, fail and try again and revamp and until you get the process right for you.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm not super proud of it, but fairly, we went through some birds to figure it out. I didn't realize that putting latches on chicken pens was not necessarily the best idea rather than having locks or having some like a physical motion to turn. In my area in Colorado where we were at, we had a really bad coyote problem. Really bad. And the backside of our 40-acre lot was a ravine that held moving water. So it wasn't like a river or a creek, but it would move water, which attracted a lot of wildlife. And that wildlife is extra attracted to a free meal inside of a coop that they don't have to track down. So these coyotes would constantly come. I also didn't realize the predators of chickens, raccoons. Man, raccoons will do anything for free food. They are crafty and clever. So setting up, like some kind of defense outside of like natural defenses is something also that I would recommend from starting homestead, or at least starting a coop.
All right. Well, so that's some of Ryan's experiences there so far with homesteading. I think we're going to wrap it up here this time around.
Cool. I'm with it.